Hey everyone, welcome to Gen 80 Talks with myself, Hatz, and my wonderful co-host, Anahi.
Hi, thank you. In this podcast, we're going to be tackling different topics that have to do with life, success, failures, and everything in between. We're going to be talking about relationships, love, family, careers, etc., and all the challenges that we face in this life that we're living. So stay tuned, subscribe, and join the conversation.
Yeah, so sit back, relax, and enjoy today's episode.
So welcome to episode technically 4, in reality 3 of Gen 80 Talks with Anai and Hatz. So on episode 1, we did the intro. Episode 2, we talk a little bit about what is self-worth for each of us, and we talk about how do we define it and how I see it and how I use it for my clients in my coaching practice. And then our last episode was a lot about validation, seeking external validation. We talk about facing discomfort and how having these different identities and labels affect how we show up in the world. And now today we want to talk about something that is going to affect everyone, because it's something that we as humans are, basically live with and need deeply to survive, which are relationships. Something that feels really triggered right now that we are in social distancing and isolate. Not you and I are right now in very close proximity. But we have been socializing pretty much steady on since the beginning of this. So if either of us is gonna get corona, halas, the other one is doomed. It's true.
You know, the whole relationship thing. So I share an apartment with 3 guys, okay? And we've all dealt with this thing, let's say in different ways. But it has put a strain on our friendship because I think if people take it seriously in different ways, let's say some people don't take it seriously at all, and then other people are semi-serious, and then some people are really serious, and you express your wishes for the other person to stay away or blah blah blah, and then and they don't, and it puts a strain on your relationship, and that can happen in families, it can happen between friends, and it's not nice, to be honest.
I absolutely love that you say that, because one thing that affects a lot of relationships, and we can start entering into our into our arena. So we got a message from the same group, right?
Probably.
One thing that is really important in relationships, especially when we're talking about feeling worthy in the relationship, is boundaries. Establishing our safe boundaries for each other and for the collective, right? So
boundaries and respect of those.
Yeah, exactly. But first you start with setting those boundaries. So one thing that you were talking about is that thing about you saying what you want and what you expect from the people, and then how they respond to that. And this is something that is beginning to pop a lot for many people right now, because we are either spending a lot of time with people, with your partner, or with your friends, or with your family members, or whatever, that you normally don't spend so much time in confinement. And then on the other hand, we are all very stressed. So our level for taking our sense of calmness and patience goes really shorter.
I think there's it's either an element of not being intelligent enough as a human being and not knowing that you're pressing that person's buttons. Is a bit of
self-awareness,
or a lack of self-awareness of what you're doing. There's an element of not being emotionally intelligent enough to understand what that person's going through at the time, because there are certain buttons you can press at certain times and not get a reaction, and then there are certain buttons you can press at certain times and get a reaction, and that's part of how that person's feeling at that time. And we got this growing up as kids, when with our parents, for example. Your parents might have a great day at work and you can press a button, you say you can test them and see how far they'll go. And then they'll have a really bad day at work, and then they'll come home and you'll press a button, and then it will just be a massive explosion. Like, what are you doing? Go to your room, this, that, and the other. And that's part of the learning curve as a kid growing up, is that you need to take notes of all of these things and retain them, I think, because then in the real world, when you're working with people that you don't know, when you have a friend that you don't know, and you don't know how they're going, you can see sort of like, there are triggers, I feel, that you can see in people's behaviors. Otherwise, you're just going to carry on doing what you're doing regardless of anybody, and you're just going to piss a lot of people off.
Okay, but I'm gonna challenge that. As a child, you shouldn't be worried about buttons to press, because ideally the parent should do the work that they need to do in order for them to self-regulate.
That's an ideal world, right?
Obviously, yes.
Yeah, we're human beings, so.
Yeah, but that's how we should be striving to become. So the reality is that in relationships, and that includes the relationship with our children or with our parents, when you have clarity, when there's an element of vulnerability for each person to establish really clear boundaries, and we are committed to them, you should never be walking on edge.
That's the thing. I know exactly what you mean. I don't think you need to be walking on eggshells or being worried that if you do this could happen. My point is, you should build some sort of emotional intelligence growing up to understand how people can react. So you can respect and understand that people are not perfect. You can respect and understand that people have different boundaries. So you know how to navigate these situations. I'm not saying that you should be fearful that, oh God, if I say this today, then there's going to be a massive backlash and the whole house is going to come down in a massive heap and there's going to be arguments and stuff. And that's a toxic environment to be in. That's a toxic environment to be growing up. That's not my intention of what I'm saying. I'm saying that if the let's say the environment is a positive environment, you're still going to have times when somebody's stressed and they need their alone time, like your dad might need his alone time. I mean, I got asked, for example, when I was getting to know my ex-wife, she asked me, do you need alone time? Do you ever need alone time? And I actually was a bit confused about the question, but I said, yeah, I need my alone time. And for some reason, she wasn't happy with that answer. But the point is, we all deal with things in different ways, and sometimes if you need alone time, you need alone time.
Okay,
right?
but this is where I'm gonna come from. In a relationship where you have both freedom and safety, where everyone has had the space to be vulnerable and to express their needs, boundaries are clear, and you don't need to navigate this very difficult, because you will know. And one of the things that is needed there is empathy, right? Is knowing that I'm gonna read the energy of the room. I'm gonna read my
yeah, but if you don't have that, that's when you, for your partner, right? If you don't have
my friends.
If you've not been coached growing up to understand what these things are, empathy, triggers,
yes,
boundaries, communication. If communication is non-existent, there's no way in hell you're going to understand what that person is feeling.
Exactly, which is empathy, where empathy comes from, right? So this is one aspect that each of us have to do the work. But I think that here, the biggest learning happens not when we're doing it to others, but when we're doing it to ourselves. Because many times the core relationship that kind of like sets the tone of all other relationships that we have in the world is our relationship to ourselves. And when we make sure that we create an inner relationship that is compassionate and loving, and of course there will be moments where we're gonna fall for the for the trap of maybe self-criticizing or whatever, but that we can recover from that. Like we were talking about last time when we talked about self-worth and how is it to come back to me where I belong. Then I'm gonna be able to extend the same thing to others, because the reality is that if in my inner world, in my relationship with myself, what I have is toxicity and negativity and criticism and whatever else, that's what I'm going to be giving the world one way or another. I'm actually filtering the worst for myself and then giving the rest. It's like making coffee, But what I have inside is actually compassion and saying, like, what do I need right now? How many times do we not even ask that to ourselves? Of course, if I don't ask to myself, what do I need right now? And give myself space to really, really respond and to really go within and see what are my unmet needs in the moment so that I can provide for them instead of trying to make the world provide for my needs. How am I going to extend that to my partner or to my children or to my parents or to my colleague, If my inner dialogue is, oh, you're so lazy, you have to do this and you have to do that and da-da-da-da, and you're fat and you're ugly and you're a loser and you're never going to accomplish anything in the world, the moment that anyone outside triggers me, I'm going to explode. But if I am working, and this is why to me it's so important for everyone to do the work through journaling, through coaching, through therapy, through anything that works for you, so that your relationship to yourself is anchored in worthiness, so that you are allowing yourself to be truly vulnerable about your needs and your wants and your dreams, so that when you go outside in the world and you're meeting other humans in your journey, you can really extend that to others. Because this is how we change the world, when we stop living from a self-centered and negative viewpoint and we start shifting to a I have space to grow, I have space to feel, I have space to to be uncomfortable, to face my shit.
But and again, for me growing up, again, I don't know if we talked about this in a previous episode, but coaches, whether they are sports coaches or teachers, whether they're school teachers or whatever, they play a very important role in let's say providing. Personally, this is my feeling. I don't know if other people agree with me or not, but they play a very important role in providing kids in their care or in their programs that balance by allowing them to sort of. It's like I don't want to. If there's anything missing at home, for example, then they can provide that.
They could
provide that, right? By giving the opportunity for somebody to open up, to talk to you in private, as a coach, I remember when I was coaching back in the UK, I was a friend, I was a therapist, I was an educator, I was, let's say, somebody that was guiding them. All of these kind of roles you play on a daily basis, it's not just the fact that you're teaching them swimming or you're teaching them football or something, you're there for them regardless and unconditionally. Obviously within boundaries, because you have to have a boundary of what you can and can't do. You can't overstep the mark, you can't get involved in their parenting and upbringing, but you are that sort of outlet to them. And I think coaches play a very important role in kids' lives and teachers, in kids' lives. And if they're not turning up unconditionally and they are not doing a great job, then obviously they will not be helping those kids. And it could be the other way around. Maybe they're getting a great upbringing at home, but then their coaching is not great. It's one of those things. So
yes, so I think that this is why for parents it's so important that we do the hard work to heal our wounds and to heal our relationship with ourselves, is because we are going to be the ones teaching our kids how to relate to themselves. We are the ones that set the tone. And as much as I want to imagine that my kids' teachers and coaches are really doing a great job, and I have to be, alhamdulillah, thank God, I'm very lucky, because all the teachers in my kids' lives have been unreal in terms of abundance of love and support. Even now that Matthew, my eldest, is doing football, his coach is incredible. And the same with Taekwondo. He wants to go because he gets so much from that, relationship. And the same happens with our friends, I'm really lucky that the little tribe that we have created here of coaches, educators, friends, I call them like uncles and aunties and everyone. It's so positive for my kids, because that gives them more of that positive feedback that they need. But this is really interesting because we're setting that almost out of the parents and into others, which is super, super, super funny, because ancestrally it was the collective that raised a child, right? It was a tribe, or it was mostly tribes, and you have everyone pitching in. So the support and the love and the advice and the education was not just from mom and dad, was from a whole bunch of people. It's from
the environment around
and
you.
It was a collective viewpoint. So it was everyone around the village will support the child, because supporting the child supported the village.
And it shapes the child,
which is something that we're missing now. So when it is only mom and dad, or in some cases like me growing up, only mom. Mostly, I mean, my dad was around, but he was just not consistent, right? The holes in parental, resources, or the woundings in the parent's life are more evident because there's only one input or two inputs in that child's life, right? Which is one of the things that we are struggling with now in our individualistic societies. We're missing the collective. you know? And that is why I believe that it's so important that regardless of where you live, you try to create a little group of people that are like-minded to you to support you in doing this, because ultimately the ones that are struggling, other than the parents, are the children.
Yeah.
And yeah, in your case, you had the blessing to have a lot of coaches and stuff, people that could support you in the ways that your parents couldn't. Great. But what happened with a child that doesn't have that blessing, you know? So to me, one of the biggest thing about working on relationships, and it is the reason why I started doing my own, like that's why I trained as a relational coach, was because it felt so empowering to be able to tell people, this is not about your partner, your spouse, or your boyfriend or your girlfriend. This is about how you relate to yourself and how you show up for yourself. I have done my work, right? And I continue doing my work. So I might get triggered, like I said now. When you sent me that message saying we need to postpone it, I was like...
No, hold on. We were talking about, I said I was late, and you were like, I'm not angry.
But I'm not angry.
It took you time to respond back to my message. Saying,
because I was...
It's fine.
I was on Instagram.
Okay, it's fine.
Okay, so going back to
Then again, I do apologize, but...
It's okay.
You said to me, I've got nothing to do all day until 7:30 p.m. So I was like, okay, basically, I'm just gonna
go back to it.
I'll just take my time. It's just not like she's got client. Sorry. But yeah, back to the whole postponing it for 1 year.
The thing is this.
I did say that we needed to postpone this podcast for a year due to the COVID-19 outbreak in 2020, and I consider 2020 cancelled. And if you have paid any subscriptions and require a refund, then please email us at COVID-19
at cancel
at
2020.
Whatever it is.
No, but listen. So we're talking about relationships and the role of worthiness and authenticity in relationships, right? And in that moment when when I got that message saying, I think we should postpone for a year, and I read it. Other than being like, no, I spent last night, I spent hours editing, you cannot tell me this. But the second thing that I got is automatically I'm being abandoned again, which makes sense because my dad always abandoned me. My dad, whenever he had an issue with his mental health or something, he will leave my life, and then it will be months.
I would never do something like that. But unless it was a joint decision. Okay. After a discussion, for us to get to the point where we would say, you know what, we need to postpone this and come to a mutual agreement. It wouldn't be just like, I'm leaving you, screw you.
Exactly, but this is, okay, but this is what I'm saying about doing the relationship. Which is dangerous in relationships. No, but this is what I'm saying about doing my inner work, right? So I read that message and I was like, my response was something like, wait, what? And then holding on to myself and being like, oh, okay, so he might want to leave this. What am I gonna do? And then instead of reacting and being like, I knew you would do this. How dare you? You are always doing.
What do you mean you knew you would do this?
Because this is how we react in relationships. Think about a relationship, babe. Just work with me here.
Okay,
right?
Okay, go on.
What did I say? Okay, what? Okay, let's talk about it. Like it was, and in my mind, what I was doing, you can open it here.
Yeah, go on. What did you say? You said.
So we're not doing any podcasting, and you said no, I'm just being stupid. Okay, and then my answer was like, okay, whatever. But before 1 year, I said 1 year.
I said morning, need to finish some chores before I move.
Which basically meant you needed to continue in bed for a few long.
Kind of. And then I said, we need to delay the podcast for 1 year due to the virus. And then I went quiet. And then you had 1 year ? And then I was like, yeah, due to Corona. And then you said, so we're not doing any more podcasting. And then I was like, no. I'm just being stupid. I needed an hour to reach you.
Okay, so in that moment, I could have made up.
Did you feel let down and disappointed for a few seconds?
Yes.
Did you really think that I was serious? This is the problem with WhatsApp, and we're going to need to talk about this because WhatsApp was a major reason for my failure in my relationship. Before
we go there, this is where my work comes in. I am assuming the best in you because I am doing my best. I am giving myself the grace to know that my best might not be perfect, my best might not be what I want to be, but it is my best because I am giving life my fucking best, which is all I can do, right?
Sure.
So in that moment when I saw that message, I could have run with a bunch of ideas in my mind, which is what happens most of the time when we get written messages. We create a whole story with tone and emotions that the other person may or might not be feeling, especially when there are typos involved, right? And then we run with it and we react. What did I do? I asked more clarifications. What was this? What was that? Inside, I was like, oh my God, is he gonna do this? What am I gonna do? I really like the podcast. Should I continue? What am I gonna do? But that was inside of me, waiting for you to give me more information so that I could make up a full decision. This is what happened when we don't do our inner work. Let's say that my children come back from school, and I'm like, hey baby, how was today? And they're like, oh, I don't want to talk about it. I have two options there. I have three options actually. I can be really triggered and feel abandoned again, because that's going to be one of my triggers. One of my huge triggers is isolation, which we have talked before. Or I can be like, okay, this is a moment where I have to show up for myself and for him. Do I have the space to actually talk to him right now? And then once I am ready, go and say, hey baby, what's wrong? And the other thing I can do is completely punitive. You are not going to talk to me like that. You know?
That's the Venezuelan.
Exactly. This is the moments where we need to do our job so that we don't react in relationship, we show up in relationship. So I could have been like, oh, okay, fine. Okay, I'm just going to delete everything. Okay, fine. Okay, fair enough. No. How many times do we react like that in relationship? Because we are vulnerable, because we are triggered, and because we don't see ourselves as unconditionally worthy.
If you did react like that, what would be your motive behind it? Is that your reverse psychology thing?
No.
Because I had that in my previous relationship, which was like, if I was to say something, it would have been like immediately the response would have been destructive.
Of course, because she had her own woundings. But this is where it's so important to have you talk about self-awareness and we talk about emotional intelligence,
so
right?
First of all, if I had that, I would start asking myself, maybe there's a reason for it. Okay, I'd start asking, there's a reason why this is happening. They don't want to continue. Let me just think of the different scenarios. I always think about scenarios. Maybe sometimes I overthink about scenarios.
And maybe you should just check in with the person. Why?
Or maybe that person's just joking with me because it's the flavor of the month. You know, it's the joke of the month.
So
before I go and react.
Exactly. So that's what we have to gather more information. So, and this is super important because what it does is that it allows you to witness your wounding if you are getting triggered, or the part that you still need to address if you are getting triggered. And I got triggered. And then instead of firing up with that, which only makes the wounding worse, it actually allows for a really nice, beautiful communication to happen and maybe a boundary to be set. So in that moment, I could have been fighting or, okay, this is the information. And look, from that discussion, which we are now doing live and public for everybody to know, we went to you saying, no, I would never do that to you. So there's a boundary there that I know that, okay, so he's not going to ditch me. That's really good. And I feel safe.
And this is why I need to talk about WhatsApp really briefly, because...
Okay, let's talk about text in general, because it's WhatsApp, it's emails, and it's texting.
Okay, I heard something else there for a second.
WhatsApp, emails, texting. You heard sex. We're not going to talk about sex today. It's not part of the discussion.
I'm sorry, I did hear it. And everybody else probably heard it.
Text.
Anyways, back to WhatsApp.
WhatsApp, texting, and emails.
Okay. Anything that is sent to you using words, without being able to see that person's body language, their facial expressions, or even hear their voice, when something is sent to you, you shouldn't assume the context it's sent in, okay? Unless obviously it's obvious that you guys are fighting, for example, or you're joking or something like that. But the point is, it's very dangerous to assume things that are sent via those three means of communication. And if you're not sure, don't react until you speak to that person or see that person.
The clarification.
To understand better where it's coming from. Because one thing I faced in my previous relationship, not so much with my parents, but more in my personal life, was there was...
My romantic life, because your parents are personal life.
So, okay, my romantic life. There were many situations where I would say something, or I would send an emoji or something, and that person doesn't exactly know what I'm doing at that point in time. So, for example, I would be extremely busy at work. I'd be running between meetings, etc. And in order for that person not to be kept hanging, I would send an emoji, like a smiley face or a kiss or something. That person would take that information and think, what an absolute idiot, I've just sent him 6-7 messages and he's responded like that. And it's like, you totally disregard the fact that that person might be doing something. They're not going to be sat there with their legs on the table, having a cup of tea and then sending you that. No, that person can be extremely busy, or that person can be extremely stressed, or that person can be. And so my advice to anybody, kids or parents or people in relationships or friends, do not take things at face value straight away on your phones. Be sure, if you're unsure, to first of all try and understand maybe that person is going through something, and if you're still not sure, give them a call, speak to them on the phone, understand better through their voice, and if you're really not sure, wait till you see them in person before you go and take your sword out, or or go on the attack.
I totally agree with that, because I think that that's something that we are struggling, like our generation particularly, because texting is actually very new for us, right?
Not new anymore, but yeah.
It's not new anymore, but what I mean is that we were not brought up with it. We got it when we were a little bit older, so our brain didn't evolve and adapt as easily as perhaps kids nowadays have, right? So I see getting very triggered with messages because of the same thing, and checking in context and asking myself, what is the context that this came from? And in my case, I offer, with my one-on-one clients, they get also WhatsApp support. So I tend to make sure that before I send a lot of information, I send a voice note just to explain what things are happening. I do like voice notes a lot. But also, I think it's important that we create boundaries around how safe we can be and how vulnerable we can be, so that we can actually, if we're going to be texting, especially now that we're all in social distancing and all that, how are we going to do it in a way that feels safe? So again, the message that you got, check in. Is this what you mean, or is this what you mean? Always bringing up compassion and thinking the person is not trying to hurt me. The issue is, Hatz, when we are so hypersensitive because there's so much pain inside, is that at the minimum touch we explode. It's like our whole nervous system is just waiting for one thing to explode because we are not dealing with our emotions. And this is why it's so important that we allow ourselves to really go within and be like, what is it that I need right now? So we're wrapping up, and this is episode 3. And today we talk about relationships, worthiness, and vulnerability. And next time we're gonna go deeper into how do we start having those relational woundings from childhood, and how that affects how we interact with our partners and our friends, our attachment styles. And finally, we're gonna go deeper into the circles of intimacy, which is what I was saying about how my relationship with self affects all my other relationships. So stay tuned, share, subscribe, like, do all the things that you need to do for us to continue doing this, and let us know if you want us to talk about something different, and we'll try to do our best.
Yeah, thank you very much. See you soon.
Yes.
Bye.